What has worked in 2021 and 2022 are unlikely to be as successful in 2023. Today we'll be looking at exactly why, and more importantly, we will be looking at what I think are the top DeFi narratives that will make millions moving into 2023 and beyond. These are narratives that I'll be personally taking action on, so it would be interesting to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. So let's jump right into today's video. The first DeFi narrative that I'll be looking at is innovation, and specifically DeFi 2.0. What do I mean by this? Well, in early 2022, we have largely been looking at various decentralized finance protocols that were essentially just forks of each other, forks of PancakeSwap, forks of Tomb Finance. What is important to notice in 2023 is that of DeFi 2.0, which include things like perpetuals exchanges like GMX, as well as cross-chain protocols that focus on preventing the vulnerabilities of Generation 1 bridges that we've seen all the likes of this year. The reason for this is because the market for these new financial primitives is still relatively young, and therefore there remains to be large amounts of opportunity for value capture by these brand new protocols, therefore allowing for higher returns from early investors and yield farmers. So DeFi 2.0 is one thing that I will be watching moving into 2023, new, innovative, decentralized apps that we will be covering on this channel moving forward. The second narrative that I'll be looking closely at in 2023 is the rise of layer 2s, things like zkEVMs and scaling solutions for Ethereum, and how this will interplay with the various other layer 1s that used to be competing within this space but have since faded into relatively small size. I'm talking about EVM chains that are not really linked to Ethereum itself by official bridges, and where there are only a small number of projects building to begin with, even towards the tail end of the bull market. The reason for this is because there has been a huge shift towards these scaling solutions. As you can see, scaling solution Arbitrum is already in the 4th place, having overtaken a number of key players, whereas Optimism is now in the 7th place, also doing relatively well. The second reason for why these layer 2s are likely to be a big narrative is because these layer 2s tend to see the biggest projects, things like Curve, Aave, and Uniswap, prioritizing these layer 2s because they are linked to the main Ethereum ecosystem, which all these large projects were originally from. So what are these zkEVM solutions or layer 2s that are coming out that we are to watch in the future? These include things like zkSync 2.0, which has just launched their baby alpha not long ago, as well as Polygon's zkEVM, which has just launched their final testnet. So all of this is already on the verge of entering mainnet, and that brings into question whether or not this would adversely affect the value of the layer 1 gas tokens on the more obscure layer 1s, perhaps even those that are backed by centralized exchanges that have fallen out of favor, especially with the collapse of FTX. So zkEVM is definitely something else to watch. The third narrative that we will be looking at more closely in 2023 is real yield. Now, I put these in apostrophes because there are a number of ways to interpret real yield. And the first one is, of course, the ability of the protocol to generate revenue. Now, GMX has always been mentioned as a textbook example of this because the yield that you're getting on GLP is actually coming from the fees collected by GMX due to leverage traders being liquidated, for instance. So the losses of traders become the profits of the liquidity providers. Now, real yield, in my opinion, can also be interpreted in a second way, which is that of inflation. Now, we all know in our previous videos that farm tokens are highly inflationary, and therefore, even though they might pay thousands of percent APY, as we see here on Beefy Finance, you might not actually be getting those returns because those farm tokens are simply going to be dumped, leaving you with capital losses that might not be offset by this APY. And now that does not only apply to all these native tokens, that applies to layer 1s as well. So Evmos is one good example, and that is because that has an inflation rate of 80.8% as of today, which also means that in order for you to actually profit in Evmos terms, in real terms over time, even if all else were to remain constant, you will need to have an APR of over 80.8% to make any real return on your investment. So that is what I see as the second definition of real yield. What you need to know is that in the context of real yield, the idea is that yields have to be sustainable without the Ponzi-nomics of our DeFi summer, which is unlikely to be back in the short term due to macro conditions. That means we need to rely less on on new capital entering a space and more on revenue generating protocols or anything that can beat out tokenomic inflation. The final narrative that I'll be looking at closely is alternatives to the overall Ethereum or EVM ecosystem. That is because certain ecosystems have continued to be building and continue to have new and interesting use cases moving forward. And one of those is actually the Cosmos ecosystem. Already we have seen things like Say built on Cosmos. We've seen things like Juno. We've seen things like Thorchain, for instance. All of these are linked to the Cosmos ecosystem, all of which have interesting new decentralized finance primitives that we will also be looking at more closely. Cosmos is, of course, not the only one. We've also got things like Aptos and Sui, the Move programming language ecosystem, if you may. And we also have things like Cardano building out their DeFi ecosystem, at least to some extent. So all of these new ecosystems are likely to give Ethereum or EVM a run for its money. So it would be wise to at least stay up to date with these alternative ecosystems, as outsized returns are likely to emerge from these younger pockets of the crypto space. So all in all, these have been the top DeFi narratives that I'll be looking at moving forward into 2023. What do you think? Leave your comments down below. And with all that being said, thanks for watching, especially in this bear market, and I will see you in the next one.